Regional Championships 2 seasons in a row. Last year it was a Saul Garcia Griego take it down. Ironically, with Snorlax, a control deck. Well, now we've got the European control deck. Looking at the prizes, anything jump out to you there?
I do see the Force Sealstone in Cremascoli's deck. Something that is very pivotal to setting up this Pidgeot EX. The Pidgeot EX is going to be everything that Cremascoli is going for, but we're off for the finals. Alessandro, going first.
And he does play 2 Forest Sealstone, so at least one will be available. We got a Mimikyu in the active, and then we see an Ultra Ball for that first deck search. Now, this is traditionally the part of the broadcast where we would start talking about, you know, here's a brief rundown of their deck. It's very difficult to do for a deck like Alessandro's, but basically we have Pidgeot that searches out whatever you want every turn, and then we've got various control things. Mimikyu in the active that doesn't take damage from EXs. There's a Milotic that stops your opponent putting their cards back into their hand. We've got ourselves that Luxray we saw in the previous round, which discards a trainer card from your opponent's hand, and a million other control style things. And for Alessandro, it's always about looking at the matchup and going, here's what's going to really ruin my opponent's day this time.
But there's one card that trumps them all. It is definitely the Pidgeot EX. The Pidgeot EX is the glue that holds this deck together. Without the Pidgeot EX, I am quite sure that this archetype would not have what it has right now.
No, I agree entirely. That quick search allowing you to search for any card during your deck once per turn. Even if you've got multiple, you're still only allowed to use one per turn, but it gets anything you want. And in a deck like Alessandro's, where there's lots of one-offs and lots of text for specific matchups, being able to find what you need at the right time is absolutely crucial.
Producer going over to Isaiah's turn. Again, we're always talking about this setup element, trying to set up the board. In this matchup, it's not going to be what we're typically used to. Isaiah has to make sure that whatever Pokemon he decides to get out of the deck are resilient and not being able to be trapped in the active with, for example, something like the Mawile, making sure that whatever hits the bench here is not going to be a liability.
Absolutely. We've generally got the routes. And when a deck traditionally works, you get your routes, you evolve up into Curlier. Curlier's got Refinement, which draws a bunch of cards. You evolve up into Gardevoir. Gardevoir accelerates energy. And then we've got attackers like Screamtail or Gardevoir itself. And while you're accelerating energy and placing damage on yourself with Gardevoir, you're moving that damage back to your opponent using things like Munkidori. Problem is, let's take this kind of matchup. Alessandro doesn't actually want to do damage. Alessandro doesn't want to take 6 prizes. That is not his win condition. His win condition is, ha, you got no cards in deck, now I win. It is a deck out deck. So something like Munkidori is honestly just a bit of a liability potentially, sitting there not taking damage and therefore not being able to move it over.
You're absolutely right about that, Ross. The only way Munkidori actually can get into action this game is by Psychic Embrace, getting those energy into play, therefore also putting some damage into play, but that can only be done X amount of times depending on the way that Alessandro plays this match. And we both know Alessandro with the Serena can be doing some healing on top of it if that's going to become an issue.
And of course, we've got stuff like Mawile, which can trap you in the active, leaving you unable to retreat, which is often a way you would use to get that energy off of a Pokemon back into the discard to reattach it with Psychic Embrace. Mawile is, well, Tempting Trap by name, and I think that really describes it quite well.
It's often we have players when they're using this Tempting Trap over and over and over again, as we saw in Alessandro's match against Fabian, where they just say, draw a trap, as we just saw.
And we do see, now this is actually a really nice start from Isaiah. Double, Buddy, Poffin, actually going for a Badoo. Now Badoo's actually sneaky brilliant in a matchup like this because it doesn't have no retreat cost. Can't be trapped in the active except by a Mawile, but even if you keep it in the active with a Mawile, you can use Itchy Pollen for 0 energy to turn off item cards. So even if it does get trapped, you can still get a lot of value from it with no energy.
And you might be thinking, well, Ross, the Badoo is going to be stuck in the active perhaps by the Tempting Trap, and Defiance Vest can get into action with Mawile. But then again, shutting off the Rare Candy, Alessandro's not going to be able to get Pidgeot EX into play without the Rare Candy. So Isaiah's essentially buying himself time to make sure that the Pidgeot does not hit the board before he's able to do something about it.
And you say can't get it into play. We mean that very literally. There are no Pidgeotto in Alessandro's deck. It is a 2-Pidgey, 2-Pidgeot line with Rare Candy. You cannot evolve up without the use of item cards. The Baduga's in the active. Itchy Pollen comes down. 10 damage. And oh, look, Alessandro's not allowed to use item cards.
You're exactly right. And we're always talking about Guardy being the non-aggressor in most of these matchups. This time, Gardevoir always likes to take time, but we do see the Erika's invitation getting exactly that Monkey Dory, the liability in this matchup, otherwise not usually something that I say always in many matchups wants to get down, but in this case, yeah, the Erika's invitation is going to invite that Monkey Dory into the active spot.
You get to look at your opponent's hand, find a basic Pokemon, and not only do you get to put it on the bench, but after putting it on the bench, you actually get to move it into the active. And whereas I said Badoo's stuck in the active, that's all right, it'll be fine. It's not how I feel about Monkey Dory at all. And of course, we've also got things like the Flute, your accompanying Flute, which can actually bench Pokemon from the top of your deck. So there are many ways for Alessandro to force those Pokemon down. You can't just say, ha 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 ha, I'm not going to bench this. No, unfortunately, Alessandro is going to make you.
You cannot exactly, though. Here we do see the Monkey Dory getting retreated, and another Itchy Pollen. Again, draws the Flute, cannot use it because it's an item card. Now, it's going to take a while to knock out this Mimikyu here. Alessandro looks at this, goes play Zarvin, of course, for a item card that's not going to be able to be used, although can get something like the Force Seal Stone and the Trolley. The Pressure Trolley cannot be played due to the Budew.
Nope.
Very nice setup piece that Alessandro plays in his deck, but we get to have it in hand for the time when the item lock is broken.
I feel a bit sad because I used Precious Trolley. That was one of my predictions, I think, for EUIC, and it didn't end up... Well, actually, no, it was in the winning deck. And now it might be in the winning deck again. Precious Trolley, that is an underrated ace-spec. Gets all of your basics out, as many as you want. So maybe I should just start predicting it more, frankly.
You're right. Perhaps not into post-rotation, but that's not where we are right now. We're getting ready with a Luxray getting benched with a double turbo energy. Some Fang sniping actions, just as we saw in that top 4. Force Seal Stone getting attached to Rotom. And a whole world of options is going to open itself to Alessandro right now.
And we do see something being eyed up here. It is, oh no, it's a Calamitous Wasteland, not a regular wasteland, a Calamitous Wasteland. And what that does is it increases the retreat cost of basic non-fighting Pokemon by 1 colorless energy. So you know how I said a minute ago Badoo had free retreat? Yeah, that's no longer true. So if I were to say that now, I would be a liar.
Exactly, but you're not, Ross. You're telling that with the claws of the Calamitous Wasteland. Going back over to Isaiah, Isaiah still has this little pickle he has to solve. Getting these energy out of deck, as he wants to always when playing Gardevoir, and making sure those hit the discard pile the correct way without getting a set too many Curlius into play, because those can become reliability. And we have to remember the amount of energy Isaiah plays is not playing hit into his advantage right now. One thing that is for sure, with the 9 energies, it actually can put himself into a position where he actually can run out of energy, leaving stuff stuck in the active position.
You can, but while you're not tempting trapped, you can continually just attach extra energy using Gardevoir to continually get that retreat rolling until Moral comes out. What we don't want is a non-psychic Pokemon hitting the board. Badoo's okay because of the reasons we've mentioned, and the good news is the rest of the deck is all psychic, so there's not going to be something like a Manaphy or a Radiant Greninja, which is often what these control decks really love to bring into the active.
And we've seen exactly that from Alessandro, feasting on these Greninjas and Manaphys and decks that cannot use them to attack, and thereby just leaving them stuck in the active until the opponent decks out. It's going to be a quick turn for Alessandro, drawing, using Instant Charge.
Yeah, not too bad. You draw, you move on with your life. Instant Charge, that Rotom draws 3 cards and ends your turn at the cost of doing so. But right now, Alessandro doesn't really want to do anything, so he's happy to just sit there drawing extra cards. Of course, Badoo turning off those items.
We're looking into a position right now where Isaiah is trying to set up for when he is ready to pull an attack off. Alessandro is quite literally stuck in this position, and Isaiah is waiting for the perfect setup, the perfect opportunity, as we actually also saw at EYC, to make sure that he can pounce on an opportunity to play Iono and attack at the same time, perhaps.
That's always fun, where you can hurt your opponent, put them down to a lower hand size, combined with taking a key KO. We've seen so many games over the years won in that exact way. Before Iono, it was Marnie. Before Marnie, it was N. Either way, it just comes down to you got fewer cards in hand, and now I've taken out a key piece. Another Itchy Pollen puts Mimikyu up to 4 damage counters, and now Alessandro benches a Pidgey. But remember, there's no Pidgeotto in the deck, and without a rare candy being available to use, we will not get a Pidgeot.
And what we will see is another instant charge going back over to Isaiah, further strengthening the point I had, right? Draw a lot of cards, set up perfectly until we're ready with everything to make sure that we can take down Alessandro in a couple of turns, perhaps without him being able to respond.
Yeah, if we see this like an old school gladiatorial battle, this is the part where both the contenders are very much circling each other. No one's really making a move yet. Isaiah's drawing a bunch of cards. Alessandro's drawing a bunch of cards. We've yet to get to the point where they've actually started attacking, or for Alessandro, really putting your game plan. We're not tempting trapping with Morile. We're not using your Luxray to get rid of some trainer cards. It's just Alessandro's drawing, Isaiah's drawing, and then using Itchy Pollen. And at some point in the not too distant future, one of these players is going to start actively working towards their win condition. For now, we're circling and setting up.
Exactly, as we're saying, circling, also getting to discard that Cresselia on the Ultra Ball, making sure that it cannot get pulled into the active by the use of something like the Erika's Invitation. Of course, Alessandro has so many cards to get back to supporters that he needs to use. For example, as the Erika's Invitation, we do just see another Itchy Pollen going over to Alessandro's turn.
Are we going to see a 7-hit KO on Mimikyu by Badoo? That would make me very, very happy. It's not something we see very often, but that would be quite nice. 70 HP, it's going to take 7 hits. I don't think I've seen that before.
I mean, you've probably seen that before in locals or something like that, but we have not seen this on the stream this weekend so far. We've seen a lot of really weird situations happening on stream. Of course, that tiebreaker game blowing into my mind. But one thing for sure is that this Badoo is going to be one that takes out a knockout, perhaps.
Well, we've seen Badoo take plenty of knockouts using that poison package with binding Mochi, doing 50 damage plus poison. Then Badoo can start doing some damage. But right now, it's slow and steady. We've got more refinement from Isaiah. Discard a card from your hand, draw 2. Are we going to see, yes, a Darkness Energy coming down onto Munkidori, activating that Adrenabrain ability? No damage to move over yet. But what we could see potentially is a Gardevoir being evolved into. Then you can accelerate some energy and then start moving some damage around. How much HP has that Pidgey got already? 60. Feels like a double Adrenabrain play to me.
You're surely right about that, Ross. And Isaiah already has a second Munkidori in hand, should that become the case. It is really building really cool up into Isaiah's strategy here. Maybe, perhaps getting into double Munkidori scenario next turn with a Gardevoir, putting free energies into play. That's 60 damage. You can move the Munkidori, simultaneously taking out Mimikyu and Pidgey, leaving Alessandro actually stranded.
That is the goal. It's got to be the Pidgeot line. You have to stop Pidgeot. You said it yourself at the beginning of this game. That is the engine. That is what drives this deck. If you can stop them having Pidgeot. Having said that, look at the size of Alessandro's hand right now. He's been drawing 4 cards a turn for like 6 turns at this stage. He's got to have 20, 25 cards in hand at this point. How much do you really need to search with Pidgeot when you've got your entire deck in your hand?
We do have to remember, though, that one thing that Isaiah kind of has to do when it comes to the point of attacking or being aggressive into the point where Badoo is not used is to play that Iono to make sure that Alessandro gets down to 6 card in. Although 6 cards sounds like a lot, but not against the 20, 25 cards in hand that Alessandro has right now.
Yeah, and that is really the goal here, because there's no point taking out the Pidgeot and then giving your opponent use of their items with a gigantic hand of cards. It needs to be, you have your items back, but you've got a sensible hand size now. 6 is sensible, 26 is not very sensible. So Isaiah checks the discard pile, sees what's available, eyeing up Munkidori, eyeing up damage. Oh, sorry, eyeing up the energy. Here comes Monkey Dory.
And we might just be able to go for the huge play that can come in here with the Gardevoir EX, piling free energies on it, putting 60 damage into play, being able to move those 60 damage over with the use of Monkey Dory's Adrenabrain onto the Pidgey, being able to take out this Mimikyu in the active with Itchy Pollen, keeping the item lock alive, and thereby also making it so difficult for Alessandro to even play.
So we have the Gardevoir evolved into. We have both Monkey Dory. We have energy on both of the Monkey Dory. There is an Artisan coming down, getting rid of that Calamitous Wasteland. Now we see an Ino coming down from Isaiah, because what did we just say a minute ago?
Alessandro's hand's massive. We have to limit it.
This is everything we needed here. This is exactly what Isaiah needed this turn. The KO in the Mimikyu is kind of fun. That's not actually that important. You need to KO the Pidgey, combine it with an Ino, and then you've got up by a prize or two, but Alessandro has no Pidgeot and no card, well, very few cards in hand comparatively.
You're exactly right about that. Although, when Alessandro draws, he'll be up to 7. Being able to Festa Dippity up to 10 cards in hand, and then also being able to use the Force Seal Stone. But the main importance here is not the amount of cards in hand. Of course, better that it's not 30, but it's the importance of not being able to Raid Candy into Pidgeot because of the Itchy Pollen.
And the problem is now, Alessandro plays 2 Pidgey. If the other Pidgey comes down, I don't think I can give you any prizes for guessing what's going to happen if Alessandro benches that second Pidgey. We're going to get deja vu all over again. Isaiah is going to do this, and that Pidgey is going to go down. It's like we saw with Duskull earlier in the day. When you get to a certain degree of setup with the Gardevoir, it is going to happen. There we go. Free energy onto Gardevoir with Psychic Embrace. 6 damage counters, double Adrenabrain. It did happen. We just didn't really see it on the screen. I promise you it did. All moving over. Pidgey KO'd. Itchy Pollen KO's Mimikyu. Alessandro goes down by 2 prizes. Loses the only Pidgey. Oh, and still isn't allowed to play item cards.
You're exactly right about that, Ross. The Artisan getting to be played here by Alessandro. Does he even get Pidgey in this scenario? He does. But we both know that this pitch is going to be the primary target of whatever Isaiah is attempting to do with the rest of his strategy.
This is the point in the game where Alessandro basically benches the Pidgey and is feeling pretty confident. If I can evolve it next turn, things are going good. If I get that evolution, things change for me. So what Alessandro needs to do here is something to try and make sure that that double Monkey Dory doesn't happen. Whether that's some kind of gusting and trying to keep in the active, however this ends up happening, it needs to happen. Because right now, well, do we have free energy in the discard? Because we would need to accelerate free energy to make it happen.
Currently, I don't not think we have free energies in the discard pile, since when Isaiah went through it, I saw 4. 3 of them already being attached to the Gardevoir. It's quite cool Alessandro is getting to bench that Feebas this turn. Importantly for this matchup, if you want to be able to lock something into the active, you need Milotic to block these Professor Churro scenario.
Now we do see Eri coming down, getting rid of that secret box ace-spec and another card. It's another one of those cards that goes after your opponent's hand. Eri comes down, you get to discard 2 item cards from your opponent's hand, and that includes the ace-spec of Isaiah there. So the big question is, and this is really going to, this could determine the whole game, can Isaiah repeat the trick we just saw? Oh, and this is actually a huge hit off of the Luxray here. Gets rid of that Professor Turo, because what you really wanted to do here, Turo up the Badoo, and then retreat Gardevoir, so you can get some energy in the discard to reattach it to put the damage over with Adrenabrain, but the Turo just got rid of with the Luxray.
Rightfully so. These Turos being so important, and that's also why Cremascoli is running the Milotic line here. But just getting rid of the Turo makes it so he doesn't quite need the Milotic as much as he could have. The Fang Snipe getting in there and being really important to try and stabilize the situation for Alessandro. It's really important that the control deck gets to actually breathe in terms of the gameplay when it comes to it.
And there's another little cheeky play by Alessandro we need to point out here. That Feebas has 30 HP. That is ripe for the picking with an Adrenabrain moving 3 damage counters over. So benches it with the Bravery Charm. It's a very nice play, basically saying, I don't think you can get treble Monkey Dory, But if you do, I'm not letting you have the Pidgey and the Feebas. That would be terrible. So a really heads-up play, not benching the Feebas until it could be benched with the Bravery Charm.
You're right about this, Ross. Getting into this situation, Alessandro playing this so smartly, getting that Feebas down. It's probably not the first time that he's been playing against these God of War decks in this tournament, making sure that when you're benching that Feebas, you have to make it as beefy as possible to make sure it doesn't get taken out by a lowly ability.
Yeah, like Magikarp and Combee, it's quite famous for always having very low HP for the basics in the TCG. So having that Bravery Charm, absolutely huge. So we're back over to Isaiah now, and essentially, if Isaiah can get free energy in the discard, you've already got your Gardevoir, you've got your 2 Monkey Dory, you will KO the Pidgey. The real question here is, can you get free energy in the discard? There are 6 Psychic Energy in the deck total. 3 of them are already attached to Gardevoir. None of them are in the prizes.
We do see the Churro getting picked up here, being able to discard these energies once again to be able to use a double Adrenaline Brain if so Isaiah wishes. He has the option to do so, but does decide to go for the Adrenaline Brain here. Not quite going for it this turn yet, although still, as we're always talking about, the Itchy Pollen makes sure that the Candy Pidgeot is not going to happen. So Isaiah's probably just going to wait a little bit longer to try and see how he can do this.
And that's the thing. It doesn't, you know, we talk about getting rid of the Pidgey, but as we said many times, as long as we lock items, you don't have to get the Pidgey this turn. We're not locking items right now. Oh, wait, it's a retreat into a Gardevoir. More energy in the discard, but we've used 1 Adrenaline Brain, so right now that Pidgey seems safe.
And smartly discarding that Voodoo. He wants to make sure that Voodoo can never be pulled into the active using Erika's Invitation. That's why when you discard it, it's safe. Since Alessandro doesn't run any man time, which is the only way that these control decks can pull something from the discard pile into play, thereby also using Counter Catcher thereafter.
Now it does seem, so we've got 6 damage counts, so we're moving some over to Luxray. Seems like we're actually going to get a KO on the Luxray here with Gardevoir. And actually, very smartly, choosing to move 2 damage counters over rather than 3, because you only needed 2, and you want to keep the damage so you can Adrenaline Brain it next turn. Here's the problem. Pidgey right now, Pidgey's out. Items aren't locked. Do we think we might see a Rare Candy Pidgeot this turn?
There's this big opportunity to do so, but Isaiah's lined this up beautifully. One thing that Isaiah can be able to do next turn with both the Serendipity and the Rotom in play is actually to be using Scream Tail. This 40 damage on the Gardevoir is pivotal towards that. Being able to retreat some energies off, use Artisan for Scream Tail, and thereby lock in the game next turn. And this is why that Alessandro has to go for a Mawile strategy to make sure that the retreats aren't flowing freely and getting into a position where the Scream Tail cannot be in effect.
We've already seen Scream Tail win 1 game on stream today that we were on ourselves, and it could be that we see that again. And of course, we just saw Arturo get discarded, we saw Arturo get played. So at this stage, does Isaiah have Arturo ready if that Mawile comes in with the Tempting Trap? I'm not sure he does.
He does not. There's no recovery for the Churro like a Palpad in Isaiah's stack. So therefore, these 2 Churros being gone into the discard pile, it means that we're not going to be able to see a Churro from Isaiah, which means that if Alessandro can pull something off like Accompanying Flute into a Pokemon, get them up into the active using Counter Catcher, and then using Tempting Trap, it's really good. But we do see 3 cards drawn, and that's going to be from the Serendipity probably here. Lucky it isn't a face to charge, because otherwise we'd be looking at something else. And the Ultra Ball going off now for the, looks like a Professor Churros, and no, that's Giovanni. And a Blood Moon Ursaluna.
That's a Giacomo.
Oh, that's Giacomo.
Giacomo and Blood Moon.
Right.
It's the alternate art, the special illustration rare, that gives me mad backstage at stream vibes. That really reminds me of being backstage at a stream. One of my favorite alternate arts for that exact reason. Just makes me feel like I'm back at an event. But what are we getting with the Ultra Ball? That is the question. I think it's already gone down the Mawile, hasn't it? We got a Mawile on the bench at least.
But the Pidgeot EX, we want the glue for this deck.
Yeah, we do.
There already is a Rare Candy in the hand, or you can get to 4 Sealstone for the Rare Candy at the very least. Also, the Milotic's not going to be needed this game since both Churros are used. Alessandro does know that these Gardevoir decks are running a maximum of 2 Churros. We typically see 1 or 2 Churros in Gardevoir, and the 2 Churro variants, well, we haven't seen 3. We haven't seen 2 Churros plus Palpad. It's either 1 Churro plus 1 Palpad or 2 Churros, not 3.
And when you're a player of Alessandro's caliber, you know these trends in deck building. If you're making a counter deck, an anti-meta deck, you have to know how the meta decks are constructed. Otherwise, you cannot be successful. Pidgeot is up. Fezandipti has been used. Pidgeot now is going to use a quick search to search for any one card. We got the rare candy off of the Forest Seal Stone. We got up into the Pidgeot. Now we're getting a different card off of the quick search. And it looks like it's going to be that Defiance Vest, which means it's going to be much more difficult for Isaiah to take some of these prizes now, innit?
And there's a beautiful combo Alessandro could bring off. He can still pull the Monkey Dory into the active with Counter Catcher, use the Tempting Trap, and you might be thinking, well, Mind Bend confuses that mobile. Well, Alessandro does play Festival Grounds to make sure that that confusion goes right away, because with the Festival Grounds in play, there's going to be no special conditions.
That is a beautiful point, and I love that because, of course, the confusion, that would kind of ruin things a little bit. If you've got to flip a coin for confusion to use Tempting Trap, that is going to make it a lot less viable. So, looks like we are heading towards that point of the game, and it needs to be now. Isaiah is in touching distance of that win, but this is where Alessandro can start really putting that lock on and saying, I know you're close, and that's wonderful, but actually, I'm sorry, you're not really playing the rest of the game. We can be here as long as it takes. Like I might say to my kid when they're naughty.
Rightfully so, as you should. But with the Defiance Vest as well, doing only 20 damage with the Monkey Dory. Yes, we do have the 40 damage on the Gardevoir, and that's something that Alessandro has to keep his eye on. How does Isaiah get to use these damage counters with the Adrenaline Brain to make sure that his Mawile does not go down? He can lose one Mawile, that's fine. But we have to get to a point where there's no damage in play for Isaiah. The Tempting Trap is in play, and whatever happens with the Mind Bend is not going to be ruining Alessandro's game.
That is what we're looking for here. So it seems like, now I don't think we've actually seen what was searched off of the Pidgeot. It seems to just be kind of sitting out there next to the Artisan. We do have a counter gain in hand, not a card we see very often at all. Oh, here we go. Oh, it was indeed that Boss's Orders, which is going to be dragging up one of the Monkey Dory, we assume. Yep, there we go. And I think Tempting Trap is a mighty tempting attack right now for Alessandro.
Rightfully so. If there's no Tempting Trap, the Monkey Dory can just retreat and get even more damage into play if used with the Psychic Embrace. But one thing that's really important about the counter gain is that there's no space for Defiance Vest, and you cannot have more than one tool card attached to a Pokemon, meaning that if the Mind Bend goes through, it would just mean that the Mawile needs to be picked up by something like a Penny to go back and do its thing again and again.
Well, you say that. It's got 90 HP, and Mind Bend does 60, so, you know, we could use some Adrenaline Brain here. Move those even 3 damage counters over. Yep. Plus your Mind Bend. Oh, look, that's exactly 90, so that could happen here. We could see Mind Bend being the thing that actually wins the game in the end. Wouldn't quite win the game, but puts that air down to 1 prize.
But then again, 1 prize is still 1 prize away from the victory. And it's really smart if Alessandro can force Isaiah to use 3 of these damage counters plus a Mind Bend to take out this Mawile. Alessandro being able to pull back the Mawile, attach an energy and Defiance Fist, and then pulling on a full lock.
That is probably what we're going to see happen, but right now, stage 1, Isaiah does need to take out this Mawile, even though it might not work in the end. We still need to take that first step. We need to get rid of it. We need to get down to 1 prize remaining, and then we need to hope that we can pull off something in the end. Lack of energy here, though, is, as we said a couple of times, a bit of a problem, because there's 2 energy we can attach. That's an extra 40 damage, sorry. But we're running out of this pool of damage to move on to Alessandro's Pokemon. Honestly, that Feebas having Bravery Charm here is huge.
You're right about that. It means that the Adrenaline Brain cannot be able to be taken out that Feebas. And Isaiah does not run any way to remove tool cards. So it means that this Bravery Charm is going to keep helping out Alessandro and make sure that Isaiah cannot pick up this easy prize of the 30 HP Feebas.
And that Feebas is, I mean, it's actually not doing very much at this stage, obviously because both the Turo have gone, and it really is there as kind of an anti-Turo card, but still, yeah, that is a little bit important. So, what are we looking at here? Isaiah
referencing a bit with his notepad, making sure that he has the full intel on what's going on here with the deck, with the prize cards. And of course, one thing I do have to note here, every single energy that Isaiah plays in his deck is either in the discard pile or in the field of play.
Yes.
There's no more energies being able to be attached. Of course, a Super Rock can pull these energies back, although Isaiah wants to be able to use the Psychic Embrace, but it just means there's a limit on how many energies that Isaiah can be able to use if he wants to keep using something like Adrenaline Brain or even charge up this Mind Bend from Monkey Dory.
Is the third Darkness energy in the discard pile?
Yes.
Okay, that one. I knew the last two Psychic were in there. I hadn't spied the Darkness. So, yeah, that means there's none left in hand, there's none left in deck, and the Darkness energy is going to be a bit of a pain. You'd have to get that back of a Night Stretcher in order to reuse it, or potentially a Super Rod getting it back into the deck. So, we are going to attach an energy to Monkey Dory as expected. That's going to put 2 damage on. Remember, we need to move 3 damage counters with Adrenabrain in order to bring Morile down into range. Here comes the Iono, actually choosing to put himself down to 2 cards in hand with no Curlier on the field. But of course, the biggest issue when your Isaiah is actually decking out, and you don't really want to build your board much more than you have at this stage. There's no energy left in your deck, which is really all you might need. So, yeah, maybe you want some kind of boss's orders at some point. But right now, oh, sorry, you count. No, there's nothing, because of course Boss's Orders isn't played in counter catching. You're never going to be behind on prizes again. So honestly, the 2-card hand doesn't really matter.
You're right. Isaiah's doing what we call typically in the game playing from the board. Whatever he has in his hand typically actually doesn't matter in this case, but the Iona makes sure that Alessandro has to pull out something like a penny to make sure he's not confused and get to attack again. Of course, the damage in play is really pivotal, but the Ralts getting into play here with the accompanying flute, that's huge.
Yeah, the accompanying flute lets you look at the top. So many cards of your opponent's deck. It is 5, and if you find a basic Pokemon, you can bench it. It's a card, it's a very unique kind of skill we don't see on many cards, being able to bench your opponent's own Pokemon from their deck. Usually you leave your opponent's deck alone. Not the case here. And now there's a Routes on the bench, and that's super annoying because both your Monkey Dory are potential attackers and are using Adrenabrain. Both your Gardevoir are potential attackers, but Routes? Nah, mate.
We do see a Rescue Stretcher for the Radiant Serena. With that ability, it's going to be able to heal 20 damage from each Pokemon in play every single turn. A great play Alessandro could perhaps have access to is something like Penny plus Counter Catcher to pull up this Ralts, make it even more difficult for Isaiah to keep up this mind-bending action.
That is what he might be looking for. Now, of course, you could still double Adrenabrain to take out that Moral next turn. And then what would be really nice there is if you take the KO during your turn, it forces Alessandro to put up a new Pokemon for you to attack before it goes back to Alessandro's turn, which can sometimes make life a little bit more awkward. For now, this is all a moot point. What we're looking at is just Alessandro kind of behind. But Control loves playing from behind. Just chill for a little bit. Your opponent's still got prizes to take. You are absolutely still in the game.
All of the grind Alessandro's going through is trying to stabilize, if we said multiple times here. Eyeing up the Penny. The Penny could be quite nice. Getting out of that confusion, being able to use the free retreat off the Pidgeot. Now, Ross, if Isaiah takes a prize during his turn and forces up another Pokemon, the Pidgeot's always nice because the Tempting Trap effect stays in play even though the Mobile is knocked out.
Yes.
Meaning that you can toss up the Pidgeot. Yes, it will take 60 damage and be confused. You're not attacking with it, and you could use Radiant Serena to heal it. So grabbing the Penny here, using the free retreat off the Pidgeot thereafter, being able to still keep the Tempting Trap in play.
I like this play a lot. You said yourself, Counter Catcher plus Penny could be the play. It does look like Penny is being played. Morile gets picked up, and we put the Pidgeot active. Again, it's got free retreats. That's always a fun thing to do.
One thing that is important with this Counter Catcher play doesn't quite work because if the Ralts gets to be evolved while it's in the active position, the Tempting Trap goes out of effect. So therefore, pulling up a Ralts, even though it might seem so great, could actually open up Isaiah to a retreating route. Although we do see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Psychic energies in play, meaning that Isaiah has to pull back the last Psychic from discard pile to get that retreat going, which is fine. but it currently has 2 retreat, meaning also we need to pull back that other darkness energy on top.
And it all starts getting awkward. One thing we did see Alessandro do there was play that power pad, grab 2 penny back from the discard pile. So that play we just saw, picking up one of your Pokemon, yeah, that's back on board, potentially twice more. Here is a tempting trap, sticking that Monkey Dory into the active, it looks like, and it was starting to get into a little bit of a loop here, because Monkey Dory, well, could still take the KO. Double Adrenaline Brain could move 5 damage counters over, and then, or even just 3 damage counters over with 1, and then do 60 and get the KO.
You're right about that, Ross. The one thing that presents is that Isaiah loses the damage counter. He loses his leverage he has on board.
He does.
There's a very cool play Alessandro can make. It does take multiple turns to do that. Can pull up the Gardevoir EX on the bench. Isaiah would then be forced to use the Psychic Embrace to it. He's forced to attach to it to take a knockout, otherwise leaving that Gardevoir stranded. If Isaiah then has all of his energies in play at that stage, it depends on if Alessandro knows how many energies Isaiah is running, then you could pull up the rods thereafter, and it would be stuck.
That is what we're looking for. It's energy, and that's very important when you're playing this game. If you don't know how much energy your opponent's playing, that is one of your jobs during game 1. One of your jobs during game 1 is to get a definitive count. How many energy are my opponent playing? Because if you go into the game knowing exactly how many they're playing, that makes your life a lot easier, because there comes a point where you can go, they're definitely out of energy, grab it up, we win. It's actually exactly what we saw from Azul last year in Stockholm winning. We counted out the switching options, and the second the switching options were gone, that was when Azul was able to go and win the game. For Alessandro here, it's less switching options and more energy.
You're right about that, although we are in a position where it's 2 very slow archetypes against each other. Even though we have 75 minutes on the clock for this finals, we might only be able to see 1 game because of the speed of which this control deck wins. Now, with the way of this going, of course, we've talked about it before. Alessandro mentioned in the interviews multiple times as well, when you're playing these control decks, you have to know what list the other players are playing. You have to know the ways around the standard lists. You have to know the counts. You have to know exactly how these decks plays into yours.
Yeah, it's very, very important. It's a deck, and like we keep saying, this is an anti-meta deck. It is a counter deck. It is a deck that says, here are the main decks in the format. I'm pretty sure I can beat them. These decks only work when you know exactly the information. Like we talked about before, knowing that a 3rd Turo or a Power Pad +2 Turo, it's just not played. That means I don't have to go and get the Milotic. I can focus on other stuff. It means that you can make these decisions, but you've got to have them right, or else you end up losing to a play you didn't see coming. We did, however, see the Monkey Dory just getting that confusion onto the Morile. It is not yet KO'd because, well, like we said, you want to keep that pool of damage because that's your leverage, I think is the way you put it. It is your option for potentially pulling off a 2-prize KO down the line.
We do see the penny being picked up by the Pidgeot though, so we're going back to the loop, looping back that Mawile, putting up the Pidgeot, being able to then put down the Mawile with the counter gain or an energy if Alessandro so wishes. Does the shortcut here, of course, and then goes for Tempting Trap once more.
And you might be thinking, well, he's going to run out of penny eventually, isn't he? And the answer, well, maybe not, because Silene is a supporter in the deck. Flip 2 coins, and for each heads, you get to put a card on top of your deck. So, yeah, you can kind of use Silene to recover Power Pad, and then once you recover Power Pad, you can recover Penny and Silene, and round we go. We could have a lot of Penny coming yet. We have not just got 1 more. We could have so many more.
You're right about that, and that's what it could take so much time out of it as well. Grinding through these options, and it's not typical you run control out of options. It's always the opposite whenever you're playing. Of course, Alessandro trying to get into this play of way. I was about to say, if my Italian does me correct, that is a Pal Pad right there. So we can get to pull back these 2 pennies, and once again use Pidgeot to quick search them out.
Yep. Penny goes back in, and this is why having Pidgeot out is so crucial. A lot of the time, we'd be sitting there going, if they can find a penny, if they can find a penny. But there's no issue here. There is going to be a penny every turn. Quick Search is going to get that penny every turn, and it just means that there's none of this awkwardness. There's no, if I get this, if I get that malarkey. It is going to be every turn I've got that card I need. So we get the Pidgeot into the active, and then we re-bench the Moral, then we bring it back active with the counter game, and and then we can go and use Tempting Trap, and then it's back over to Isaiah's turn, knowing that there's at least one more turn of Penny, and then we can always start using Silene to get Power Pad back if we need to.
You're right about that. Although the Silene turns would mean that you're using a supporter for the Silene, which means you cannot use Penny, importantly. Yes. It also means that Isaiah gets a turn to breathe, essentially. Or if Alessandro has to hit the Confusion Flip, which, again, 50-50ing if you're using Tempting Trap or not, that could be detrimental.
The problem with that is you would also then get KO'd going into your opponent's turn, giving them the next action, because that 30 from Confusion would do it. If you hadn't healed with Serena, of course, which I'm willing to bet you probably would have, honestly.
If you're taking a Confusion Flip, you sure are using that Serena.
So now we see the Monkey Dory attack in there, putting that 6 damage counters on, and then we're back over to Alessandro. We've at least got 1 Penny left in the deck. Can we keep using Penny? Do we have to take time off to use Silene, which, as you've said, is a supporter card? Are we looping this? Do we have any other options coming in? So we know it's not going to be a prize race. Alessandro will lose a prize race. It has to be just running Isaiah out of options. The other thing is, I don't know if you have, I haven't. Have you been counting Iono for Isaiah?
I have not.
There's 4 in the deck.
There's one thing I did count, though. There's both a boss and a counter catcher prized, which means that the play I was mentioning before with pulling up the Gardevoir, making sure that gets attached to, and then pulling off the rolls, it's not going to be quite a viable play, actually, with the pennies and alike. So it actually means that Alessandro, due to the cards he's actually prized, is on the back foot. We cannot keep recursing this mobile infinitely, unfortunately, because at some point they will run out, and we could also see situations, since Silene is a flip card, where it doesn't get exactly what you need.
That's the other thing. Not only do you have to take a turn off of using Penny to use Silene, but there's always that chance that you hit double tails and you don't get your Power Pad back, and that means you don't get your Penny back, and then that is a bad situation. We are 14 minutes into our 75-minute final here. We have used more than half of our allotted time. We're still in game 1. Remember, obviously it's a final, we will have a winner, but the relevance here is whoever wins game 1, if game 2 doesn't finish at the end of time plus 3 turns, game 2 never happened. So the winner of game 1 here is absolutely crucial. Let's say Isaiah's able to grab that last minute win, because Isaiah runs out of a key resource. That means if game 2 doesn't finish, Isaiah wins the final after a very long 1-0, but will win the final 1-0.
That is a major importance here. We're playing for the win here in the final, of course, with that invite to Worlds hanging out there, and $10,000 as a prize as well. Both of these players are looking exactly like that and thinking, well, I'd like that, please.
Yeah, they've both already locked up at least $7,000 for coming second. This game is worth $3,000 plus your Worlds invite, which is obviously the biggest prize for most of the players here. Worlds is the absolute goal for the majority of the competitive player base. That is what they really want to do, get that invite to the World Championships. The winner of this game will get that direct invite. The loser, frankly, won't.
You're exactly right about that. And it's also, when we're talking championship points, it's also on top of the automatic invite, on top of the $3,000 being played for here effectively, it's also 20 championship points.
Yeah, that is a few extra championship points. That's always a nice win. We see Arvin coming down here, not Penny, but one of the cards we've gone for is Counter Catcher. There is one prized, but there's one in the deck. There's 2 total, 1 prized, 1 in the deck. The one available is now in hand for Alessandro, so this might be where we start seeing Pokemon brought up. We've also got a Lost Vacuum. We used Lost Vacuum to get rid of the Artisan here.
Yeah, we do see, actually, with this arena being healed, are we going to see Confusion Flip?
We might see the Confusion Flip.
It looks like he's going to grab it. Counting out, Alessandro has to make sure that he's doing the exact thing. Of course, using the elegant heal off the Radiance Arena. We see a big flip coming up here.
This is a huge flip, because we could see an interesting play from Isaiah if this is a Tails. It's a Tails! That means that potentially here, that play we saw with Screamtail, maybe we can actually pull that off now if we can get enough energy in the discard, which is a big if.
And since Tempting Trap is not in play, it would mean that the Monkey Dory can retreat freely. We can get to see a promotion of Screamtail, perhaps, although the Radiance Arena has 140 HP. It's still difficult with the energy we have in play from Isaiah's board to figure out where we can get that last prize. We can use Adrenabrain for 20 damage onto mobile. Then it's knocked out. That's cool. then we have to try and see where can we find the last knockout. Of course, the feedback's there. If we can get a couple energies down, use Screamtail for 80 damage that fits correctly with the feedback. So we see the Screamtail here.
There we go.
We're going to be able to see the retreat of the Monkey Dory.
Now 2 energy from the discard pile onto the Screamtail, which is going to be 40 damage, which is going to be 80 damage. Adrenabrain onto the Morile. Damage from Screamtail onto the Feebas. 2 prizes. Isaiah wins game 1, and that was a very long game 1.
And it was a very long game 1 indeed. Almost tying up. Well, it did take over half of the allotted time we have here in the finals. Isaiah going up 1-0. And the question here comes, Ross. Are we sure that a control deck can win 2 games in half an hour? I'm not quite too sure.
I'm not sure. And here,
we see a
concession! Isaiah Bradner is your Stockholm regional champion!
And we see a concession of Alessandro, seeing the fact in the eyes, half an hour is not enough to win 2 games. Dirtborn making Isaiah Bradner our 2025 Stockholm Regional Champion.
And you see how much it means to him throwing off the headset, that shout of triumph. Isaiah so many times has made the final and been unsuccessful. We see a hug between our competitors there. This means so much to Isaiah there. And we almost see we got the old player there in Alessandro. He's been around forever, like myself, almost kind of passing the torch to that new player, saying you've made it, you've got your regional win. And I love seeing that camaraderie between the players. It is wonderful.
You're exactly right here. Isaiah almost with tears in his eyes. This means so much for him. Always being the bridesmaid. You know what, Isaiah? This is your wedding night. Congratulations.